So my name is Amber Gibson, and I coordinate ACMI X, which is a co-working space that's located in the Australian Ballet Centre. So it's ACMI's co-working space, and we have 72 screen industry practitioners that hold residencies in that space. So, and we want to welcome you to this event tonight. We co-produced this event with Screen Australia, and before I begin, I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, whose land we attend this event tonight in Melbourne, and I would like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander peoples joining us tonight. So tonight we're here to meet the Screen Australia team and learn about how they can support the development of your screen project. Amelia, Laughlan, who is the game's investment manager, and Lee Namo, who is the head of online, are going to explore and explain the various funding opportunities available at Screen Australia for anyone making content for games and online platforms. I would also like to introduce Susan and also Michelle, who will be our Auslan interpreters tonight.
And I need you, do 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 do, and now I want. That's a lot of people watching. Why?
Hey ladies.
Oh my god, no.
What is happening right now?
R.I.P.
These men.
They made me feel this big. They made me feel like a piece of crap, sorry to swear.
What an absolute narcissist.
You do drugs?
Yeah, heroin and crystal meth every day.
I love this.
Yeah, we'll get one of those.
All right.
Let's make it happen.
I'm here to meet you.
We have to cancel the wedding.
Whoa, stop, she needs our help.
How are you going? I'm golden.
Hundreds of thousands of people are here for me.
I was thinking we all hang by the pier for my birthday.
I honestly couldn't imagine anything worse.
We'd like to apply for a job.
This is a nice change.
Enjoy your trip, bro.
Funny.
So what's for dinner?
Risotto. Wet rice. I decided it's my responsibility to cheer them up.
Yes, Captain.
You don't learn that at TAFE.
Something ain't right with the nation.
I'll just stay until things are back to normal.
I'm investigating my dad's murder.
Okay, that's a tricky one.
There's chicken in this.
Hallelujah.
Could there be a future where it's as easy as ordering genetic modifications from a menu?
You beauty! You beauty!
Everyone stay calm.
Yeah, sorry, no people eating.
Then I guess it just leaves it up to me.
If you're over 25, absolutely.
No, sorry. I think we... No, I have a good mind to leave a bad review.
I hope that's been interesting to you. If it has, please
Like and subscribe.
and I'll see you in my next video.
Hey everybody, I'm sure you would have put together by now that all of those projects were funded by Screen Australia through our online department, and one of the reasons that we're here today to present is that hopefully, next time we show that reel or in the future, maybe one of your projects can be in that highlights reel. We're here to talk about different funding avenues through online and games at Screen Oz. My name's Lee Namo, as it says on the screen. I'm the head of online. Just a quick bit of background. Before I started at Screen Australia, I was a member of so I was a comedian, a performer, a producer, a creator. So I know what it's like to be on the other side, looking at Screen Australia and going, what do they want? What is Screen Australia looking for? What do these words and these guidelines mean? What's an application form? I've got funding with my comedy group, The Axis of Awesome, through things like Skip Ahead, Fresh Blood, and then we funded a sketch comedy series called Insert Coin about video games. So I've kind of come up, and each time I've learnt exactly how little I knew about being a producer and a creator. So I'm trying to bring that experience to the role to answer as many questions and kind of debunk our guidelines and our processes. So tonight I'm going to chat about online funding. Amelia's going to then take over and chat about our digital games funding, and then we'll leave you with some contact details at the end and have a bit of a Q&A. So thanks for coming. Thanks to ACMI X and ACMI for supporting this, and Amber and the team for putting it on. Okay. I'm going to talk about stuff that's not in the guidelines. Before I do that, I need to give a bit of context on what we fund. You can come to Screen Australia for your web series, for some TV shows, for XR projects. We fund that through development, which is anything before you go into production. That's a really broad definition for development that we put on it. It can be anything like writing your scripts, funding a writer's room, filming a proof of concept, hiring other people to help make your scripts the best they can be. Anything pre-production, essentially. Production funding, self-explanatory. When you're ready to go into production, when you've got all those scripts ready, you've got that project and maybe other investors in that finance plan. We also fund completion or post-production funding. So maybe you've gone out, you've shot your web series, you've done the hard work, called in a bunch of favors. You get to the post stage and you realize I can't call in favors anymore with post-production or marketing. So we fund those projects at that stage as well. And we have special initiatives, some of which you may have heard of, like Skip Ahead with YouTube, which is in its 8th year now, Digital Originals with SBS and NITV in its 3rd year, and Every Voice with TikTok and NZ on air. But what I really want to talk about tonight is what is Screen Australia looking for? So I want to give you some of the questions that we ask, some of the things we look for when applications come in so that you can apply them to your projects that you're working on. It's really crucial to know when people ask us this question. We don't come at this from the same point of view as a broadcaster or a commissioning platform. We're not looking for projects in the kind of realm of, true crime series aimed at people, skewing female, age 35 to 49. We're not that kind of definition. We're more interested in funding projects that you're excited about, projects that you wake up in the morning thinking about, that you go to bed thinking about, that you have that passion for. And projects that have an audience. And I'm going to talk a lot about audience tonight, and we want you to be thinking about that the whole way through. So, some things that we think about that you should think about too. First of all, the creative materials. So these are, broadly speaking, some of these are our assessment criteria, and some of them are just things that we look at and lenses that we apply to assessing your project. Pretty much we look at everything and the creative materials first and foremost. Is it a great project? We do ask questions like why now, why you, why this story? And that's a really good starting point if you're trying to convince someone else to give you money, which you're doing when you're applying to Screen Australia. We want you to be thinking about why is this project so special? Why does it stand out from all the rest? Why is now the right time to tell that story? Is this project ready? Has it gone through, no matter what stage you're at, have you scrutinized it creatively? Have you really looked at those creative materials, be it scripts or be it that pitch video or that project Bible, the proposal, to really feel like this is in the best shape it can be? That often is a collaborative process. So have you had other people come in and help you pull that apart? I'm going to chat about teams in a second as well. Is this unique? Is it compelling? Marketplace awareness is really good, and by that I mean just knowing what other projects are out there. A lot of people come to us for web series funding having never really watched or engaged with many web series. So that's one of the first things I tell people to do. Go and watch some web series. I just showed you a reel of a whole bunch of them. There's funding approval lists on our website. We're funding great web series all the time. So, and there's plenty being released without our funding, which is equally great. Is this a compelling project? Is it needing to be told? Who is telling this story? I'll talk a bit more about that later as well, but we do look at, does the creative materials on screen, do they match the people behind the camera, the people who are telling that story? And that conversation is becoming more and more important as we move on. is this an online project? By that I mean we're not really in the business of funding TV Lite in my department. We want to fund stuff that is really naturally online and knows the platform that it's on. Some of the things that help with that are that specificity of content and that specificity of audience, rather than, and I'll mention broadcasters a bit later, but the clue's in the name for broadcast. They're looking for broad appeal projects. Whereas online, it's actually better and more appropriate to be niche and really specific. The more specific you can be, that can untap a really large audience online. I'm sure there's many of you out there who know that. And you know, we've all got our niches that we dive into online and the kind of content we like to engage with. That's what we want you to be thinking about from the creative stages. And is there an audience for this online content? That's pretty important. There probably is, but where are they? We talk about we think and ask questions about the people making this project. Who's on the team? What have they made before? Super important. You know, it's never been easier to film something, get it up online, test that audience out, even if it's something, you know, that you've shot on your phone, you upload to YouTube, to get a sense of what that feedback is from an audience, that instant engagement. It's really, really important. And think about it from our point of view. You're asking us, in some cases, for hundreds of thousands of dollars. We want to see that you have that experience and ability to manage that budget and that scale of the project you're applying for. This may be the biggest, in many cases, it's the biggest budget that teams have worked with so far, and that's fine. My department is all about emerging creators. I've been there myself, and every time I got funding, it was for many times more than I thought. The first amount of funding I got was $10,000 through ABC and Screen Australia for Fresh Blood, and I lay down on the floor and couldn't breathe for a few seconds because it was more money than I'd ever imagined in my life. And the next time we got more money, and that was more money than I could ever imagine. But it goes really quickly, so we like to see that you can manage that production. Sorry, when I say it goes really quickly, on screen, on those valid things, not on you know, personal parties or anything like that. We ask all those questions to determine, can you make this? It's pretty simple, but we have to have those kind of checks and balances to make sure that you're able to manage this budget through to completion. Marketing and release. This is hand in hand with audience. How are you going to get out there to that audience? We really scrutinize this in online. We ask for marketing and release plans, and I can tell you that you really can't be too detailed on those plans. The more detailed, the better. Who's this show for? I was talking about niche audiences earlier. Where are they hanging out online? What kind of platforms are they on? If you're putting your project out on something like Facebook for a really young skewing audience, it might not be the best fit because audiences on Facebook users are getting older. I say as someone who uses Facebook every day still. Why will this audience watch this? Why will they keep watching it? You know, online screen storytelling is actually a different medium to other platforms. You do need to have quicker, faster hooks and cliffhangers and things that will compel that audience to come back, because think about what you're competing with. You're competing with only every other piece of content ever made that's available online. So you've really got to think about how you're going to cut through to that audience. Again, you know, what platform will this live on? Talking about all the different platforms. For reference, we do tend to fund across, like typically we're funding a lot on YouTube and TikTok. We do some on Facebook and Instagram. We have partnerships with SBS for SBS On Demand and sometimes on ABC iView. But those commissioning platforms are funding less and less, and we're seeing a lot more through YouTube and TikTok and those kind of platforms, especially TikTok, where it can be quite, I don't want to say easy, but easier to build that audience and get those views. Is the marketing campaign realistic? You know, we would much rather you have something that was achievable and smaller in scope than trying to be everything to everyone, given that it's probably you and your mates on the creative team who are going to be doing the marketing for this project and living with it for the next couple of years. And again, I said this earlier, we want you to be thinking about this from the very beginning. Even in early development, we ask questions about who your project is for. The lovely topic of money, we do, particularly for production funding, we do ask questions about you know, who else is bringing money to the party for your finance plan, and how much are you asking from Screen Australia? I'm sure many of you know this, but just in case you don't, I talk about things like finance plans and budgets. Finance plans the finance plan is where all the money for your project is coming from. So it's essentially often only a few line items around, you know, who is putting money into your project, and your budget is how you're spending that money, broken down line by line. Does this all make sense together? We then look at the overall application. Do all the elements speak to each other? Does the creative scope of the project match the budget? If you've got items in your marketing and release plan that you're going to have paid ads on certain platforms, do you have those items in your budget, for example? Does the team's experience match with the scale of what you want to do? If there's something quite ambitious, are there people with experience bringing that to the project to level up more emerging creators? And that's something that we quite like to see, is when there's more experienced people on a team bringing up people who may have not got this opportunity without them. I'm going to do a bit of a case study now on a project that we funded, I think last year. So I'll show the first episode. It's a TikTok series, so it clocks in at just under 1 minute long, and then I'll have a bit of a chat about this. This is called The Formal.
Oh, I can't believe they're making us plan formal in our lunch breaks.
Oh, I don't want to do this. Mr. Pearson thought we'd be good together.
So obviously, first things first, we need to make sure that no one's going to be rocking up in the same thing. So what I need you to do is launch the Facebook group, direct internet traffic there, and really just be ruthless, making sure everyone who's going to be wearing a dress is in that space. Are you friends with everyone on Facebook?
No.
Okay, well, how about I add you tonight and then you can start adding people from there. Okay, which leads me to the Hemsworths. I think we could get them. Like, they live in Byron apparently, which is only a 9-hour drive. He could just come in, pop his head in and just set the vibe.
What do you mean, do I like her? Yeah, she's cool.
Great reaction, thank you. That project, they shot that first episode as an application for a competition between Screen Forever and TikTok called Got a Minute. By the time they got to the finals, which they got to, they were one of the top 3 teams, it had over 1 million views already on TikTok, so there was already kind of an audience engaging with it. They then got funding to make 10 episodes. It was a modest amount. They went and made those 10 and then came back to Screen Australia for production funding for seasons 2 and 3, which are all released now. You can watch the whole season. The total is like just over 30 minutes because every episode's a minute long. Spoiler alert, they do get to the formal in the end, and they budgeted for an actual event of it. So what I love about it is that just by watching that first episode, you know exactly what it is. You know the very familiar genre of the mockumentary style. They play into it really well. There's a promise and a question left there between those two main characters. And it's very low, it's a very small budget project. We really just see those two characters and 2 supporting characters throughout the series. You don't need to see many characters in TikTok because the frame is vertical, so you actually can't fit too many people in. So they're really smart with the way that they've used the amount of money and the creative hand in hand. They know who their audience is. They were one of the first, not the first, but one of the first scripted series to go out on TikTok. And they experimented a lot. They would engage with the comments. They would reply to comments. They would do things like comment baiting, where they would ask questions in order to encourage viewers to reply to them. And that helps boost projects' content in the algorithm on TikTok. So the algorithm, just putting myself into the algorithm's shoes for a second, it sees that there's more comments on a project and people are engaging with it, so it pushes it more. And then therefore more people see it and more people comment on it. So it, just really clever small things like that. To get it out there. I think overall it has somewhere like around 10 or 12 million views across the whole season. That team are now working on season 4, which is going to ideally pivot to YouTube. They're coming into talking to us about a bunch of other projects. So that was the first time we'd funded them, and it was a really great project and a team to work with. So I showed that to kind of give a sense of like, things don't have to be massive in scale. You can and probably should start quite small early on. Finally, I just want to talk a bit about authenticity, because this is something that we do ask and scrutinise when you apply. This is lifted directly from our story development guidelines. You can read it, take a photo if you want to, but it's all online there. We do just like to see that like I said earlier, the content on screen is matching the creative team that's creating projects, and more we're asking that question of who is telling certain stories, to make sure that essentially people who have been historically excluded from things like funding at agencies like Screen Australia are feeling like that they're welcome and they can apply and be competitive. Hey, thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Amelia to talk about games.
Awesome, thanks Lee. So, in 2016, I attended an event called She Makes Games. It took place right here at ACMI. I got to sit in a room with 50 to 60 other women who were either working in games or aspiring to, watching another woman talk about her 10 years plus experience working in games. The timing of this for me was crucial. It had come after 12 long months of fruitless searching for a job in games. It was just the inspiration I needed, because after another few months, I'd done it. I'd found a job at an indie game studio. In the years since, I've had a lot of amazing opportunities. I've worked on a lot of different games, and I've played a lot of different games. And what I've come to love is how games are able to put you in the shoes of somebody else and let you do things and be people who you probably won't ever get to be in the course of your natural life. You could be a refugee queen fighting to save her people. You could be trying to pick up the pieces of your life after a war or horrible apocalypse, and I seriously hope that is something that doesn't happen in the course of your natural life. Or you could be a cat burglar who's breaking into a top secret science facility to steal sciencey secrets. Games are a really exciting medium because they're little empathy machines. They let us experience other people's stories in a really exciting way. And for those reasons, I'm so excited to be here to be able to tell you about the Games Expansion Pack, because with this funding, you might be able to tell your story through a game too. So I'm just going to start by showing you a sizzle of some of the games we've funded so far. Cool. So one of the reasons that I wanted to start by showing you that sizzle is because people often ask me, what sort of games do you want? What does Screen Australia want from me? And as you can tell from that sizzle, in terms of genre, there really is no set prescription around what we're looking for. We fund all sorts of games. There are some guidelines around what you can submit and what we fund up to, and I'm going to give a really brief overview of that. But similarly to Lee, a lot of that information is available online via our guidelines. So instead of focusing on that, I want to tell you a few things that we think about when we're looking at your application so that you can be looking through those lenses too to give yourself the best chance of submitting something competitive. So in case people don't know, the Games Expansion Pack is a federal government agency fund, so we are funding games with a budget of up to 500,000 Australian dollars. In the scope of games, this is quite small. It usually means a team of sort of between 1 and 5 people. There are exceptions, of course. That's not a hard and fast rule. It all depends what point of development you are in. But your budget can't exceed 500,000. We give grants of up to $150,000. Crucially, there's no minimum percentage of other funding sources versus our funding sources for this particular fund. It is competitive to see other funding committed to your project. Obviously, if other people have put money behind it, it probably has legs. But we know that in some parts of Australia, it's really hard to get other funding for your game. A lot of opportunities are concentrated around the East Coast, and so we know that in some places it's really hard to get other funding, so we don't need you to have other funding sources. The game must be classifiable in Australia. You should have a good idea of this because you should know what your game is. I think most people can get a kind of gut read for what their classification will be, so that's something to stay aware of. And crucially, the game must be under the key creative control of Australian permanent residents or citizens. So what we mean by key creative control is that when you fill in an application with us, you can identify people as key creatives or other creative team. This is a weird distinction that isn't really in other gaming contexts, but basically what it means is that key creative figures are confirmed and integral to the project. The project sort of lives and dies with these people. These are the key vision holders. The other creative team are still really important, but they're people that might be brought in sort of a contracting capacity to fulfill some extra piece of content for the game. So that's what it is. Let's talk about how you know if you're ready to come in. This is a really common question that we get. So you can come in at all different stages of development. Broadly speaking, in game development, you have an ideation phase, prototyping, alpha, beta, and then the nebulous period before release. Some people call this pre-release, some people call this the Gold Master Candidate milestone. It has many names. But we get applications anywhere, I would say, from the prototyping stage through to beta. What we want is for you to have a clear path to completion of your game and a clear path to the release of your game when you come to us. So depending on the size of your team and the scope of your project, that could be during prototyping. If you're one person and you have really clear vision, you're a solo developer and you have all of the skills, then maybe you do have enough to come in at a prototyping stage, and then, we'll see you through that whole process. Other teams might be a lot further along at the point that they come in. Either is fine, but the key thing is that you can see that path, that you have done the work to reduce the ambiguity on your project to the extent that you can see that path forward. So in terms of people behind the game, it's great for you to see an understanding of the roles that are needed to bring the game to completion. You don't have to have everybody already on the payroll, but you do need to know what is the outstanding work to be done and what sort of roles would be needed to get that done. And I say roles and not people because we all know that in indie game development, people are usually wearing many hats, the hats of many roles. Crucially, and very similarly to what Lee was saying, audience is something that we really want you to be aware of as well. So some identification of your audience and understanding what the hooks for your game are. So you know what the vision for your project is. The hooks are essentially summing that up in a way that's digestible to other people. I'm going to talk a little bit more about audience when we come to the marketing and release plan. So, what materials do you actually need to apply? I've laid them out here. I won't talk about the finance plan and budget or online application form in detail because you can go online and just look through those. They're pretty straightforward. The finance plan and budget in particular, we offer a template for. So it has instructions on the first tab and everything is there laid out for you. The playable prototype I will spend a little bit of time on because this is another area that we get a lot of questions about. So to demystify it a bit, the point of the prototype is to give us an idea of what the vision for your game is. It's not supposed to be a vertical slice. It's great if you do have a vertical slice. You can give that to us, but you don't have to. You can submit a grey box. You can submit a test of some sort of key mechanic of your game to see if that works. But crucially, what you need to do is give us context for that prototype. So if you give us a prototype for a card game that you're making and it is the central social battle mechanic of that game, that sounds really cool. But if I don't have any context for what I'm doing or why with these cards with social interactions on them, it's going to be confusing. It's going to be hard for us to understand what your vision is. So because of that, we do ask for a document. We have specific questions around what are we looking at, what's the context of this prototype compared to the vision for the final project. Marketing release plan. I could talk about this for a long time, but I promise I won't. To pick up where I was talking about before, To start with, I guess I want to say that this is something that I've heard in other talks, but essentially hope is not a marketing strategy. So about 12 years ago on Steam, there were only a couple of 100 games released each year. And this is where this myth comes from. Because in those days, you kind of could release a game and see what happened. But these days, 10,000 games are released on Steam each year. And it's only growing, and that's only on Steam alone. So you really, really need to think about what you're doing when you're making an indie game in terms of who's it for. Now, similarly to Lee, we're not looking for, females aged between these ages who live in urban areas. That's like useless information. What we want is an understanding. It's called psychographic segmentation if you want to look it up. It's a marketing terminology. But essentially, think of a Venn diagram for your game. Your game is in the middle. What are all the things that contribute to your game? And perhaps a good way to think about this is what inspired your game in the first place, If you want to make a teddy bears picnic game, maybe there were some really sweet children's books about teddy bears that led you to that. So probably the people that read those books might want to play your game. So having that in the profile is a really great idea, because then maybe there's a book launch for the new teddy bear game, and you can, the new teddy bear book, and you can go there to tell people about your game. So really things like, what other games do the people play that you're looking to attract? What other piece of media do they consume? Where do they hang out? These sorts of things are way more useful. In terms of the scope of your marketing and release plan, try to think about it like the scope of your game. You don't go in there telling me that your game is going to be everything and have every feature imaginable, because you and I both know that you do not have the time to do that. And yet, we get a lot of marketing and release plans where people say they're going to post on every single platform, they're going to make a dev vlog, and they're going to make dev diaries and all of this stuff, and it's all I can see is it's so much work. And there's two of you, and you've got to make the game as well. So please don't do that to yourself. Instead, choose a few really targeted things that make sense with that Venn diagram you've made of those people and where they hang out and who they are. So a few targeted marketing streams are better than many sort of undirected ones. The development plan. So my background is a producer, so I know very well that there's a lot of ways to put forward a development plan. We're not prescriptive about the format for the development plan because of the nature of diversity of the projects that we receive. What we are really looking for is overall context of what the project work is. So what is there that's remaining to be done? This could be in the form of high-level milestones, or it could be, like a thematic overview of the work to be done in every month remaining of development. Something, whatever makes sense for how your team is working. That's high level. Then we also want to see at a low level, how are you actually going to do that work? How have you broken it up? How have you identified how many hours and what roles are required to get to that endpoint? The other secret sauce that we love to see is an acknowledgement and an awareness of the risks inherent in your development schedule. So everybody has fears about what's going to happen during development and how that would totally derail the project. What I encourage you to do is really get in that worry box and write them all down, and then think about what you would do if they went wrong, okay? So if you are worried that your artist is going to fall out of the project because they're moving to Thailand next year, maybe start networking with some other artists to try to get somebody on board. If you spend some time thinking about it, there's probably a solution to every risk that you're worried about. So not only will you feel a bazillion times better, we'll also have an understanding that you know how to deal with the problems that you're going to encounter during development. Video pitch. So this is only 3 minutes long. You don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. Some of the best video pitches we get is footage of the prototype or footage of inspiration with people speaking over. It doesn't have to be high production values, but what it does need to do is basically the same thing that you would be hoping to do if you were pitching to us in person. So what you want is for us to walk away feeling really excited about your project and excited to tell other people about it and to advocate for it. So you really want to bring that energy, that drive of what makes your project exciting to you, to us. That's the first thing. The next thing is around that audience and the hooks. We want you to tell us who else is going to be excited about this vision, and it should be kind of easy because if you're so excited about it, you should hopefully be able to think of some other people who are excited too. The third part is the impact that this game is going to have on your business if it goes successfully. So all three of these things are really crucial in the video pitch. In terms of success, it doesn't necessarily have to be a huge commercial success. There are lots of ways to count success of a project. If you do think you're going to be a huge commercial success, great. But if you think that your game is a great opportunity for you to work with some people and you're really going to skill up together and you're going to be well equipped to make something else, if your project is going to upskill underrepresented people in the industry and give them a chance to work on an exciting project, these are all reasons that we might want to put money behind your project. So whatever it is, you can tell us about that. I would say the biggest mistake that people make with the video pitch is spending 70 to 80% of the time talking about the vision for the game because that's what's comfortable to them, that's what they like talking about, and then they don't spend enough time talking about the other parts. Any effort that you put into thinking about the other parts now is going to be great for the future of your project. So really encourage you to think deeply about that. Rehearse your pitch. You can also show it to people. We're going to see it with no context, so show it to your parents, show it to your aunts and uncles who know nothing about your project, show it to people who don't have that context and see how they respond, see what you can do to make it clearer, to make sure we're going to understand what you're speaking about. Finally, and pretty briefly, I'm just going to highlight the criteria that we use because this is another area that I guess I want to demystify. Because I think people believe that we get applications and they sort of go through these mysterious filters of how we decide which projects are important. But in reality, what we're doing is we're judging them against these 4 pieces of criteria that you can see on the screen. It doesn't matter if we as assessors like your game project or not. Our job is to assess it based on the criteria. Of course, everyone has personal biases, but our job is to do our best to put those aside and judge these things as objectively as we can. So what that means is having a good awareness of what's happening in the market around those things, and also understanding what's happening specifically in our market in Australia and how you're sort of ranking up against that. So I guess what I'm saying is the bar is determined by what else we're getting. So it's really important to be in touch with the genre that you're developing for in order to, I guess, succeed in that space. That's everything. So if you're keen, you can scan our QR codes. They take you straight to the guidelines, which is the first place you want to go to find out more about everything that we've been talking about.
If you've got tricky questions, as it says, we have FAQs. Read them. We have some great podcast episodes that we've recorded recently. Really encourage you to listen to those. It's, again, another way of digesting those guidelines and what we're looking for.
You can also email us directly. We have the online at screenaustralia.gov.au and games@screenaustralia.gov.au. These are inboxes that both Lee and I see directly. You'll get to contact us, and if you have tricky questions, we will get back to you. We also have the Screen Australia newsletter, which you can find by Googling for it, and that's where we make official funding announcements about what's gotten funded, if we have new programs and initiatives. So definitely recommend that you check that out.
We also do like to talk to people about their games and their projects, so feel free to get in touch about that. These are things you can do before that will save us all a lot of time, because often some of your answers might be contained within these valuable artifacts. But we're going to be here. We've got business cards. We're both based in Melbourne. We travel or take Zooms and phone calls all the time, and part of our mission is to fund projects from all around Australia. And the best part of that is talking to people and hearing about their exciting projects.
I think we're going to take some questions now. So thanks everyone for listening, and happy to hear questions.
Cool.
Thank you so much. So we're going to go to the in-person audience. Does anyone have a question?
That mood lighting, look at that.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Vet. My question is for Lee. Hi.
Hi.
I guess primarily to give some context, I'm a production designer. I'm shifting into a space of making my own work as a director-writer. I almost want you to sell it to me because I'm kind of malleable right now. Why online? Why do I want to go down that route as opposed to making a short film and sending it around the festival circuit? Like, why? What do I get out of making a web series? Where does it go beyond that? Does it go anywhere beyond that? I know it's like 5 questions.
No, but
you get my gist.
Yeah, totally. 5 great questions. And the answer really is that it might not be right for you, right? Like, it's not for everybody, and it is quite specific. It is something you need to know a bit about. I guess to take it back a step, we used to fund short films at Screen Australia, and some departments still do, and we sometimes fund them in online through special initiatives. But we've shifted away from that because we're responding to where audiences' eyeballs are going, right? There's certainly value in making a short film, doing the festival circuit. That can be a way to get noticed. That can be your calling card to whatever you want to do next. I would guess TV, feature films, bigger budget projects. I think that pathway is narrowing, and I think that we need to acknowledge that audiences, festival views aren't massive, and online views can be really massive, and even if they're not, you can get that instant engagement with the audience that I was talking about, that instant feedback to know what you can do differently next time, or maybe what characters the audience wants to see in season 2. That engagement, I think, is really crucial. In terms of one of the other questions you asked about, like, what next? It's really different for everybody. I guess, in all honesty, it is rare for a web series to jump format to then become a TV show.
But they do win awards at festivals sometimes, right?
Yeah.
So there are
web festivals as well. There are a few examples, Auntie Donna, Super Wog, The Catering Show, some of those. I mean, even Catering Show didn't become a TV show, it was then Get Crackin' from the same team. That's the more likely scenario, right? You make a great web series, you get a bunch of views, it looks great, you get a great audience response, you then can walk into a meeting with, the bigger funding departments at Screen Australia or ABC or SBS or any one of the billion SVODs out there at the moment and go, not only have I made something, but I've made something that people watch and like and has this number of views on it, or that attention can come through various, other means, awards or whatever it may be. So I guess that's more the pathway that we kind of see. A proof of ability rather than a proof of concept for a bigger project. We've been around long enough to see that happen. There was a recent, it might have even been last year, I have no concept of time anymore, but Amazon had a slate announcement and they had 8 projects on that slate, and 5 of them, one or more of the key creatives on those projects had gotten funding through our department, and I didn't print it out, but I essentially...
You wanted to frame it?
Yeah. I was like, this is the system working to me. This is like our department doing its job, because I don't want to fund people for 10 years in a row. I want to fund you once, twice, 3 times. Then I want you to graduate and go off and get funding for bigger projects. So it's been around long enough to kind of have that pathway. But again, that pathway might not be for you. You tell us what you want to do, and we can go, okay, that might fit better over here. And I guess I'd finished this very long answer by saying we acknowledge we can't be everything to everyone. So your pathway might not be through Screen Australia. It might be through Screen Australia in 10 years' time when you want to get your feature film funded, and making a short film might be the best thing for you. I guess I'd just encourage you to, like I said, watch some web series, see what the landscape is, and if you do want to make them, that's what we're here for, and we have money to give out for people who want.
I would also say that we get a bit of interest, don't we, from other screen agencies overseas in our online department, because it is pretty unusual. You could probably speak better to this than I could, but they're looking to it and seeing all of the success coming out of it and being like, oh, well, why are we still doing short films? So it does seem like there's a bit of a trend towards that being a greater path to success, but we'll have to see. Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Down the front.
Hi, I was just wondering for the post-production funding, I know for enhancement funding for feature films, that if your production wasn't paying people minimum rate, you cannot get enhancement funding from Screen Australia. Is that the same thing for post-production fundings as well?
When we fund for post-production, and you're successful, you would sign a contract saying that you've engaged with people and contracted essentially to award minimum rates. I am also aware the reality is that doesn't always happen, but that onus is on you, I guess. We know there's not a lot of money in online. It's maybe a conversation we could have about it, I guess, because, we acknowledge a lot of web series are made on sweat equity and calling in favours. I guess what we don't want is a situation where, and this has happened, where your project goes out in a media release and then all the people that you didn't pay go, oh, well, now you got money, so where's our money? Because we can't fund retrospectively. So it's one of those things where there's it can be a tricky issue, but
it is in our terms of trade that you have to pay people minimum wage for anything that you're doing through us. So at the end of the day, the answer is yes.
So if we pay people retrospectively, does that still count at all?
Without funding, you wouldn't be allowed to do that
with
without
our own money, and then if we can get funding for post-production, and then
you contribute your own funds as well. I think we should have a conversation.
Yeah, I think so too.
This is getting complicated.
And it can be risky as well. If you're engaging people on the promise of Screen Australia funding, it's never a guarantee, right? So you might be walking into territory where you're kind of your mouth's writing checks that you can't. Yeah, you know.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yep, in the middle.
Hi, it's funny because I feel like I'm crossing both of these streams, but it's mostly for you, Amelia. If there is a project coming to you where a key creative is not a game developer, speaking mostly about the conversations I'm having about film and television people kind of coming across into games, would you see that? I was going to say, would you see this as a plus or negative? Obviously, it's more complicated than that. How would you respond to a project that, especially if it's a narrative-driven interactive experience, how would you respond to that person coming from film and television?
Yeah, that's a great question because we do get a lot of people coming into the fund from other backgrounds. The short answer is there's no problem with it. We take it as part of the overall application. So basically, if somebody is coming into a project having never shipped a game before, that's okay. We've funded a lot of people in the first round who are actually in that situation. But what we would want to see is that they've done the work to understand what it takes and maybe see that they have the dedication and follow through to ship other things. So maybe they, like in your case, they've probably worked on other creative projects in the theatre space, in film and television. We would definitely want to see all those credits in the application. We want people to contextualize themselves. We also saw a lot of people in the first round coming from a software engineering background. That's great to know if you've shipped, continuous updates every 2 weeks for the last 5 years on a piece of software. Obviously, that requires similar dedication to getting a game complete. So basically, that's sort of a minor risk. We just want to see things in the application that de-risk that for us. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. So it's definitely not a negative. It's just about telling the whole story of it. And if you've gotten to the point where you're partway through making a game, you're probably really passionate about it as someone from another industry. So, tell that whole story to give us confidence that you can see it through. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yep, in the middle again.
Hi, this is a question for you, Amelia. Lee mentioned platforms quite heavily in the for the online, and also mentioned preferencing certain platforms over others. Is there a similar more is better vibe for the development for games, especially considering the development issues that come into with specific platforms?
Yeah, it's a great question. We don't discriminate about platforms. Obviously, we have a good market knowledge of what's easier for an indie team to break through on. So I would say it's not prescriptive, but what we normally see is people shipping for PC or Nintendo Switch. PC primarily because it's one of the easiest for somebody to release something on the first time, but it's also easiest to test. It's easiest to do early access on. And Nintendo Switch, because of the genre fit normally of the game. That being said, we did fund stuff in the first round that was on, I think, every platform. What we're really looking for is to understand why you want to ship on those platforms. A lot of applications just tick all of the boxes. They're like, yeah, PC, yeah, we're going to do Mac, we're going to do this, we're going to do all the consoles, it's going to be great. And I love that optimism. But the reality is that the boxes you tick in that application are actually what's going to go through to your contract. So you have to deliver on all those platforms for us to pay you. So you can always ship on those later. I think what we want to see is like a validation of why you want to be in those particular markets. Xbox and PlayStation are notoriously hard to get discovered on as an indie without some sort of big win thing that's backing you up. Switch as well, but there's ways around that. So we basically just want to see you validate what platforms you're going to be on. There's no right or wrong answer for your project. We just want to know why that platform.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess follow on is, because a lot of the discussion was kind of around initial like come to market projects, not necessarily like adaptions and enhancements to ongoing projects. And so this is, I guess, where the question of funding would then go is like, what does funding look like for applying for those additional platforms for something
for
already
a port or something like that,
or for a localization?
Yeah. So those things are eligible for the fund. What we tend to say to people is, how are you going to make that competitive? And there are ways to make it competitive. For example, there's a huge Nintendo Switch user base in Japan, and there's a huge appetite for very story-driven games in Japan. So if you said, I have released this amazing indie story game and it's doing super well, and that franchise is known in Japan, and we want to port it to Switch and we want to make it into Japanese, I'd be like, yeah, cool, that all makes sense. That could be quite competitive. But if you are just porting to a new platform in the hope that maybe you'll make some extra sales, obviously that's not going to be as competitive. Another thing that could be a good idea is, ports tend to do better when they have additional content or have like special content or a feature. So if you're going to do it, maybe there's something that you want to tack onto that. So they're both eligible. It's just about being strategic. I'd say it is harder because as Screen Australia, what we want to do is encourage Australians to create original IP and retain ownership of that. So that's what we want to do. But yeah, there are definitely ways to make an application like that competitive.
I just want to quickly go back to the first part, sorry. Rather than preferencing certain platforms, that's more we're seeing a lot of YouTube and TikTok and funding a lot, because that's where audiences tend to be. But that said, happy
to fund other stuff.
Exactly, yeah. Something came out on Instagram yesterday. Great animation, the future of everything. Go watch it. So yeah, I get excited when there's a weird new platform that might be emerging and audiences are going there. I'm interested to see what is it, Mastodon?
Twitter platform, the Twitter replacement. Yeah,
we'll see. Anyway,
controversial.
Yeah.
Thank you. All good. Yeah. So we've got a question online from Steve.
Hello, Steve.
Does the business applying have to be owned by Australians as opposed to the creatives being Australian? The percentage of ownership of overseas people or other agencies, is that a consideration?
Yes, that is also in our terms of trade. The company has to be, I think the wording is primarily managed and controlled by Australians, so it would have to be majority Australian owned and operated, basically.
Yeah. The reasoning behind that being it's taxpayer money, so we need to make sure that's going to companies operated out of here.
Awesome. And does anyone else have a question? No, going.
Oh, we got one.
What makes your eyes roll when you get an application? Because you sort of touched on a whole heap of stuff. Like I run Queensland XR Festival, soon to be Australian XR Festival next year. But we get submissions, and some of them are fabulous, and they go on to be finalists, they go on to be winners. But there's also submissions that we get, and we roll our eyes, and as does anyone who receives submissions in any way, shape, or form.
Do you want
what is it that makes your eyes roll?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'm going to interpret it slightly differently, and more than eye roll, like my heart break.
Heartbreak. Sorry, heartbreak.
Don't worry. I do roll my eyes, certainly. But my heart breaks when I see an amazing project, a web series that looks beautiful, that's really so much care and time's gone into it, and it just doesn't fit online. It might be like I said, TV Lite before, might be way too broad for online. It might be something that's like I guess maybe derivative, or it just doesn't have a home online, and people haven't thought about that from the start, and it just isn't viable for our funding. And I want to support those projects, but I just can't look at my job title and go online and this project, they just don't match. So that's really disappointing, which is why we try and talk about all the things we look at, all that audience stuff, to just make you think about it from ground zero, so you're just it's embedded and you can't remove it from the project.
I think for me it would have to be really derivative projects, which is not necessarily always the fault of the applicant, because we're sort of in the infancy of games as a medium. You know, games like 30, 40 years old, but we're still overall in time, so many people associate games as a medium with mainstream game genres and titles, and so you don't always see the same creativity that you might see in other mediums and people thinking as wildly. And I just want people to do that. I want them to follow their weird and make the project that really makes their heart sing, rather than being like, oh, we'll just make another really hardcore 3D platformer because Hollow Knight sold really well. Like, don't try to follow trends. You can try to follow trends if you're going for like VC funding or something, but this is Screen Australia funding, right? This is to fund original and creative IP. So we want to see your most creative, all the stuff in those reels was so weird. Like, follow your weird and then bring it to us.
Yeah, I was going to flip it on its head and say what makes me excited is when something is super weird and super original. And I would never have thought of that. And I just, whether I love it or not, whether it's for me or not, it's so unique and odd. And that, in both games and in web series, works really well because people aren't finding that kind of content elsewhere, so they go online to find it. The weirder it is, I think it's a bell curve, but yeah. Talk to me afterwards if you want to know my favourite weird Adult Swim cartoons that I watch.
Cool. That was a great question. Any others? Oh, another one at the front.
So I got one more question about like audiences. I was just wondering, in terms of like how specific do you want it to be? For instance, if I'm making a show like Black Mirror, and I know people who like sci-fi will like that, but there's no access to information about who, like the demographics about Black Mirror. Do you need to know like the age group, like where they are, that sort of thing?
I mean, I think as Amelia said it, that stuff, there is a value on the demographic side, but really it's more about the makeup of those viewers, those fans, and what else they're doing, what else kind of comes into their day-to-day life in the form of content. Something like Black Mirror, I reckon there'd be heaps of data online about the audience for that. It's a very broad show. It's got a broad appeal, but there's some specificities about it, right? Like tech and horror, thriller, fear of things going wrong. Is he sitting a nerve?
The broadest
for anybody?
theme possible. No, I think it's an interesting thought experiment for before Black Mirror came out, right? Because I do think it was quite genre bending. But even then, I think, there's always been stories that are about the future and different versions of the future and what that could be like. So like Star Trek could be a good example of where to start, and maybe some of the, seasons of Star Trek that had darker themes, that sort of thing. So that's one thing. And then you just sort of have to follow those. It's basically like going on an internet rabbit hole, right? Of like this thing, and try to find how all those people come together.
I mean, we do say the projects that tend to work best, it's not hard and fast, but in online we say we want you to be a fan of the work you're creating. So if you are a fan, then you'll know what other fans look like, because probably like you, they probably watch similar stuff to you. So and in the same place, maybe at the same time, while they've got something on their TV and on their phone at the same time, all those kind of habits and ways we consume content. If you are it, then you'll instinctively know it as well.
So we don't necessarily have to like specify, like for instance, like 18 to 24, that sort of thing.
I mean, look, our applications will ask you that, so you will. But what we're really interested in is in the actual documents themselves, is that understanding of who this is for. So yes and no. I hope I have not answered your question at all.
Cool.
Any other questions?
No one else?
I think we're good.
No? Oh, good. Okay. Well, thank you so much for that. That was awesome. We're going to go to the networking part. That sounds like a horrible word. Everyone's like, but you could just come down to the stage area and get a drink and have some food. And if you do want to talk to Amelia Lee and you're a bit resistant to do so, you should just do it because no one else is going to do it for you. So push your way to them and go and chat to them. They're obviously very friendly and knowledgeable, or you can email them after, but you could also see them face to face. So thank you so much for coming, and I think that's everything.
Thanks, Amber. Thank you so much to ACMI for having us.